Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday's episode of Trending. Today's show is sponsored by the brand new range of Ickonic coffee, which is available on our website, shop.ickonic.com. It's available in both ground and whole beans. Thank you to those of you who have purchased it already. If you head over there and use the code TRENDING, you'll get 10% off. And as always, all proceeds go towards supporting this show and the rest of what Ickonic has to offer. Rich, how are you doing this morning?
All good, mate. All good. We're halfway through the week. Gareth's sunning it up in, where is he? Mexico?
He's in Mexico. He texted me yesterday saying he's sunburnt, and I replied with absolutely zero sympathy. I've just had to de-ice my car. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to talk this today about a few stories, obviously, but we're going to start with a story that kind of come a bit from left field. But then if you think back just a few months to the election we had here in the UK, it was a talking point in the lead up to that as well. So this is a story here from the Daily Express. General Richard Shiref, interesting name, has said that because of the apparent refusal or potential refusal of Trump to support NATO and to support European allies in a sense, hence why they had supposedly had this emergency meeting yesterday, we need to bring back conscription here in the UK, which, you know, most people will know what that means, but that means basically you have to do a period of time in your life, usually before you're 25, in the military. Usually it's 2 years, I think, is what it used to be. Or in the time of war, the time of, a declaration of war, you get called up and you have no choice. You just get called up and sent to the front line. That's what we've seen in Ukraine. That's obviously what happened in both the World Wars, the first and the second. And as a result, not only did that lead to mass casualty, it also led to a lot of people that weren't at all trained. And we've seen this in Ukraine. It's been quite a common story. Not at all trained, being just chucked on the front line as cannon fodder and going from, working in the supermarket to the front line of battle in a matter of days. So, we've seen videos in Ukraine of people quite literally being arrested off the street to be taken off to war. And it was a very similar situation here in the UK during the Second World War. But the reason I think this is interesting is because cast our minds back to, late May, early June of 2024, in the run up to the election we had here in the UK. And from nowhere, the then Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, the leader of the Conservative Party at the time, came out with a very similar concept and said that he wanted to reintroduce what he called national service. Now, again, national service essentially means conscription within the military. So he wanted to force young people to give, in his words, give something back to the community, give something back to the country before they go out and, earn their money and get on with their lives. Now, as a concept, if you take out the military element to it, where young people have to give something to their local community that have raised them, whether that be helping with food production, whether that be helping with looking after the elderly, whether that be helping, single parents who need support, that sort of concept, I think a lot of people could probably get on board with and have some sympathy towards. However, that was just a little bit of a sales pitch to make it sound more appealing, when in truth, they were talking about conscription. And then just a few months later, with a new government, as tensions in the world are rising to an all-time high, this conversation comes out again. And this is actually a sitting army minister, a sitting army representative, if you like, that has said this in this story. So do we think that those two things are completely disconnected, Rich? Or do you think Rishi was he knew he was going to lose the election, which anyone, I think, can observe and accept that he never even tried to win the election, and his job was to ensure Starmer gets in. He kind of chucked that out there as a bit of a seed to be planted, so that then when it's brought back around and it's heard again, it's heard for the second time, sounds a bit more familiar. He obviously got the pushback and a bit of the outrage from people out the way when he said it, that when they come back and say it again, are people going to kick up quite as much because they've heard it before? What's your take, mate?
I think it was testing the water. I think it was testing the water to see what the reaction would be if they even teased that sort of thing. So they had to gather that data. They can gather the individual data now on every single person. Palantir will store that nicely for them. So they'll just get that data on who's willing to do it, who supports it, and who doesn't. So it's a different situation, different world we live in than we did, say, in the 1930s and 40s, where people would be anonymously standing up against it and saying, no, I'm not part of this. Now they can specifically target individuals that they know that will be willing to do this and kind of calculate how many would go along with it. So I think it was a testing of the waters initially, just to see and gather that data on. We live in a different world now. The information is there, and they can break that down to the microcosm. So I think that that's what it was, and I think that this is another round of it. Let's test it again. Let's see what's happening. Building to something else. You can't. I don't believe you can do in this country what they did back then in the 1930s and 20s for the
Yeah, I
first two
agree.
world wars. You can't get away with that now. People are far more informed, far more anti-war in terms of don't believe in the country in the way in which they did.
That's the big
Same
one, I
as
think.
happening in the US. Yeah, we don't, because we know that it's lobbied by Israel, that you're bunging a load of money off to Ukraine. People know what they're going into now, so you can't approach it in the same way. But what you can do is you can digitize the information to the point where you can specifically target individuals that are pro it, and see if you've got enough to make a situation happen. It's far more calculated now in this digital age than it was 100 years ago, obviously. So I think it's a testing of the water. We live in a different world, Jay, than we did.
We do, and I think what's interesting, you make a really good point there about, sense of national pride is a big thing that's changed. And also, I think what's a big thing is that when you've got younger people, particularly military fighting age men predominantly, because that's generally who would serve in the military, particularly on the front line, they've essentially been abandoned in this country. They've essentially been told that they're all far right, racist, thugs, this, that, and the other, and then you want them to go and fight for you. That's a square that you're not really gonna put. You're trying to put a circle in there, and it's not really going to work. So I think they're going to have a lot of pushback on this. So I think with the Sunak one, I definitely agree with you. I think that was testing the water. I think it was a chuck something out that he knew he wasn't going to win, so he knew it wasn't going to really matter. But it was a gauging of public opinion, which wasn't positive, by the way, which is fantastic news. That's really, really good that people are seeing through the BS, as you pointed out, Rich. People are more informed, more aware, and less likely to just believe a politician because they say it. So that's a positive. And I think, again, with this one, because the red line for so many people, we've seen it, right across the world with so many different things. The red line for most people is when it comes to their kids. And if you've got, the older generation that have children, that have grandchildren, that would fall into the category here of fighting age and would be, in the line for conscription and for call up and stuff. I think me and you might be all right. I think our kids would be in the firing line, however. There's a big resistance from those people like never before, which is, an incredible opportunity, I think, to really push back against the system if they try and push something like this forward. Like, if you remember in the Second World War, was it Roosevelt who got re-elected, and his whole campaign in 1942, I believe it was that I'm talking to you, mothers of America, your sons are not going to go and die in that war in Europe. Obviously, then, he knew Pearl Harbor was coming, and then obviously they went and did it anyway, which is exactly what was always going to happen. But his whole sales pitch was that, and that really is probably what got him elected. So I think, appealing to the generation of people that can see through the BS a little bit more and trying to get them to support their children and grandchildren in this, I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to at all. And I think that's a really, really dangerous game they're playing. And I see this as an opportunity for a big win and a real chance to put some egg on their face, because I just don't see it. A few idiots, like you say, and maybe they'll target them, Rich, because with the digitalization and listening into conversations and texts and social media, they'll know who those people are who are going to be interested. But they'll also know the vast majority aren't. So I see this as an opportunity to stick two fingers up to the powers that be. Stick Starmer on the front line. I've always said that.
Well, yeah, exactly. If you see him hit a punch bag, we're not gonna last very long, are we?
Well, if two countries want to go to war, stick the two leaders in a cage and then let them have it. And
the issue is they're on the same team. They'll just lick each other and hug.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point.
It's one thing I'd just like to add to that very, very quickly is that this could be, and I remember we said that we've been saying repeatedly now that they can use any situation to benefit their agenda in any way they want. So it could be that they go, well, we haven't got enough people signing up. We're going to have to implement more AI. So just watch that.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's very much one to watch. Absolutely.
Yep.
Completely agree. Right, where are we moving to, mate?
We're moving to, and I apologise, we've had a lot of Elon Musk ones, and but it is what it is. The news is what it is. So now he's introduced Grok3. Grok is the worst name for anything. I just can't. Just sounds terrible. It sounds like something you wear on your feet, but you've got from the market, and they're not quite the originals. You know, when you used to get Adidas.
It's Crocs off Temu, basically.
It's Crocs off Temu. Yeah, it's Elon Musk unveils XAI's Grok3, claiming it's the smartest AI on Earth. Now, if you remember, only a few days ago, or sorry, about 2 weeks ago, DeepSeek came out and they were all astonished, and they only did it for 6 million. And oh my God, how did the Chinese do it? Well, a lot of people don't know, and I think I pointed out on this show that the US and China share AI projects all the time. 46,000 AI research papers between MIT University, which is a CIA, basically intelligence university, and universities in China which are connected to the CCP. There is no AI race. They are connected, and it's openly so. Even the US Congress is worried about this. So when you see DeepSeek coming out and then panicking and going, oh, China's well ahead, we need to catch up, let's get Grok3 out. It was supposed to come out last year. And they're pretending they didn't know about DeepSeek when the whole industry knew in December anyway. It's all theatre to bring about this AI, and they're all going to connect together at some point. So when he comes out with his Grok3, it's smartest, it's the quickest, it's nonsense. They're all components within the same system. And that Congress investigation shows that they share intelligence across the board. These are students going from one university to the next, across the board from China to the US. There is no difference. So 46,000 papers. So just be aware that you're being shown a narrative and a theatre across the board. And so this whole Grok3 coming out, they can tell you any old nonsense and tell you it's the fastest this and the fastest that. How are you going to know? How are you going to know?
No,
so, you know, trust your own intuition with these people. They're not trustworthy.
Yeah, and I think with AI, I think it's a very important point to make is that with this being a global agenda, it's not isolated to one particular country, one particular region, one continent. It's a world agenda. Hence why no matter who seems to be in power in any country, really, different countries are at different stages of it. You know, there's obviously large parts of the African continent, for example, that's nowhere near as technologically developed as the West. So you might look in some of those nations and think they're a lot further behind. But, you know, when this is rolled out, they won't be. The cloud that's being sent, being built by the satellites, a lot of them by Musk. That doesn't exclude places like Africa and South America and so on. It includes all of them in terms of the where they're going to be able to reach. So I think you have to forget nation states, and probably more so on this subject than any other. We've spoken, haven't we, Rich, a few times, and with Gaz as well, about, you know, nation states and borders only matter to us. They don't matter to this agenda, to the cult. But probably more so than ever with this particular subject, because the whole end game of this cult is the integration of AI and technology with the human mind. Now, to do that, you can't have any borders. And to do that, you want every single man, woman, and child to be on the same page in terms of being able to do this all at the same time. Because I don't see a point in their agenda may be slightly different to what I'm thinking, but I don't see a point where they go and chip everyone in Iceland, for example, and then there's a few years goes by and everyone gets on with their lives, and then they might go and chip everyone in Norway, and then they might come to UK and might go to America. I see a point where when they really want to go for this is globally rolled out, because the last thing they want is to do it somewhere and it be so catastrophic for people and be obviously catastrophic for people that the others go, whoa, hang on, don't want any of that. Don't want any of that. In the same way, they've always been terrified of a good example of what a nation can look like, what a culture can look like. They're also terrified of a really, really bad example of what they want, because then that warns people that that's not a great idea. So I think it's a really interesting one, a really, really interesting one. And I think with all these, I was thinking about this morning, with all these stories involving the US and Ukraine and Russia and Iran and all of that, China all of a sudden is not being discussed. It's all of a sudden gone quite quiet in terms of, I mean, a little bit more in the last couple of days as they're talking about this peace deal with Ukraine and Russia may embolden China to go for Taiwan. I've been seeing a story about that this morning. But it's gone very quiet in the sense of it's not being discussed in a geopolitical sense anywhere near as much as other nations. And if you rewind that a few years, it was. So when things are quiet, it's normally because things are going on in the background. And if you look at you look at the system in China, it's the closest to the system that they want to create in terms of, the facial recognition technology, the fact that you can't do or say anything, the social credit system. It's very, very much closer to the system they want to be the international system than the ones we see in the West today. So I don't see a point where these countries are separated in any way, shape or form anymore.
It's a really good point. How do they do the switch over? When you look into the Chinese social credit system, sorry, it's different in different areas. I think people think China, one big thing, is huge, obviously. And so there's different cities with different versions of this credit system tried out, and some are more extreme than others. So, and it's really difficult to get a grasp what the truth is because they have a firewall internet. They're almost like a little world of themselves. Same in Israel. They don't share the same internet that we do. So their information is completely different. Their worldview is completely different. So it's really interesting to try and get a grasp on how prevalent the social credit system is, but definitely the security and the police state is there. Now, what I think what you're pointing out there is something your dad has been talking about for a while, is the soft cell thing, this microchip thing, this Neuralink thing, putting something in your body. Well, that would be difficult to get everybody involved with. But what about if the technology is already in your body and you have no idea that when the switch on happens, it's already there? I would say that's more than likely going to be the case, and it will be a few generations down the line. We will no longer be here. You might be, but you'll be really old. But I won't be here, and it'll be the fact that it's a switch on over over a certain amount of time that the technology is passed down through your genetics. I think that would be more likely than a chip in your brain, and maybe that's just the soft cell there that they're shooting rockets onto the moon whilst they're actually going into different realities anyway. So I think there's something to what your dad's saying there, is that we're just seeing this kind of play theater of technology.
Yeah, I agree. I think if it's in the public arena, if it's in the public domain, it's light years back from the cutting edge of what will exist in the underground bases, in the deep think projects, in the secret military intelligence projects and rooms and so on. I think people focus on Musk's Neuralink and the chip in the brain and all that. I think that's as you point out there, I think that's just theatre. I think the way that would work, that technology would work, would be a lot more seamless and a lot more underhand than that. I don't think it would be anywhere near as in your face as that. I think that's theatre to make you think that they're nowhere near where they actually are. So interesting times to say the least. But I do think, without sounding negative, that the technology we mentioned yesterday, the dynamic between the servant and the master, has gone way too far towards the master. But technology, and particularly artificial intelligence, that to me is one of the biggest dangers if not the biggest danger, more than any one person, more than any one institution, any one corporation, any one company. That is the biggest danger to what happens next and where we go as a species, because you get technology in the mind, you get technology in your body, and it starts doing your thinking for you. You could reach the point where you can't even comprehend resisting. You can't even comprehend fighting back. Quite literally, the term that we use is non-player character in a video game, where your responses to situations and your mannerisms, your movements, even down to the things you can say, are all scripted. They don't come from any form of consciousness, any form of intuition, any form of imagination. They are just completely scripted. Someone's typed some numbers in a key, like a script, and you just play it out. And I do believe if they get the end game they want, that in a sense will be what humanity becomes, which is a terrifying thought. And as I said a few minutes ago, Rich, we've both got young kids, mate, and they're going to be alive at the time that they want this system in. So that's why we do what we do. That's why we're never going to give up fighting back. And I'm sure many of you watching this will be in exactly the same position. Whatever you're fighting for, we can't give up. We certainly can't give up now.
It's a terrifying thought, Jay, but it's your thought, and it's your thought. Or at least you think it is your thought. What about when the whole system of being in two minds comes to the point where you don't know if it's your mind or the computer's mind? And that's what worries me, is that when it comes to the point when you don't know if you're doing your own thinking, it's a digitized Wetiko, and Wetiko is the mind virus. And that's what worries me, is we're getting to the point where even Kurzweil said, although I think he's an absolute lunatic, that they'll get to the point where human thinking will be utterly negligent. How do you know when your thoughts are not your own? That's terrifying.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ray Kurzweil is a Google executive and a futurist. For those of you watching, I'd urge you to take a look at some YouTube videos of him, particularly his TED Talk, where he was from a good few years ago now, where he was talking about this implantation of of technology within the human mind by 2030, which is just a few years down the road, which is, you know, an interesting one. And if you look at Kurzweil's record, he's very, very accurate with what he predicts because he's on the inside. He obviously knows what is going on and when. So I would urge people to take a look at that if they want to know more about what Richard just brought up there. Right, we've got two slightly lighter stories to finish on here, Rich. One of which is from here in the UK, from Wales, which it made me laugh this morning when I read this. So the Senedd Committee, which is basically the Welsh Parliament's Standards Committee, has recommended strengthening existing procedures, including updating the Code of Conduct for members. Fine. So Code of Conduct for their politicians and MPs and councillors and so on. Great. They say they're doing this because trust in politics is at an all-time low. I would agree completely. Now, here's what they've said they won't do, however. The Senedd Committee has warned against making lying in politics a criminal offence. It comes after the Welsh Government committed to introduce legislation that would ban members from deliberately deceiving. However, their Standards Committee say that's not a good idea. Now, very rarely would I agree with politicians, but the actual politicians, by the look of it, are the ones that want to introduce this law. And it's the committee that are meant to ensure they keep, their standards up to what would be expected or should be expected from being in public office. Don't think that that's a great idea. We've spoken about it many times. It's a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant idea. If you are caught lying, now there's a difference between being misinformed or getting something wrong, or maybe, with a breaking story or an ever-changing event, maybe saying something that then, an hour later is slightly out of date or is slightly, isn't appropriate anymore. That's very different. That's not deliberately deceiving, as the story says here. Whereas if you are in the lead up to an election, like we were here last year, and you say, I am never going to raise taxes on working people, when you know damn well you are at your first opportunity, I would say that is deliberately deceiving. When you've got your energy secretary, lunatic Ed Miliband, saying £300 will be saved by every household as a result of GB Energy, when then at the same time the average household bill before the rise that's due at the end of March has gone up £21 per annum. So there's a £321 discrepancy between what you've said and what's happened. Again, I'd say that's probably pretty deliberate. When you say you're not going to send troops off to war and then you do exactly that when you get in power, I'd say that's deliberately being deceitful. So how much do you think politics would change if this law was actually introduced, Rich, and was actually genuinely enforced? Do you think we'd see some honesty and integrity in politics for the first time?
Well, I think it would collapse because you're taking the oil out, aren't you, of the machine? It's lying is what they do. That's that's politicking. That's built upon lying and deceiving each other as well. None of them trust each other. None of them like each other. It's a horrible pit. So if you took that out, there would be no politics as we would know it today. There would be a promise to, which way it should be. I completely agree with you. A promise to, and when you get in, you do. And if you don't, you're out. Yeah. And that's the whole point. Now, lying and not fulfilling a promise can be skewed differently as well. But I think, Jay, that it collapsed. These people are born liars. Look at them. That's what they do.
Can you imagine?
They're salesmen.
Can you imagine Prime Minister's questions when there was a vote? The eyes to the right, 3 people. The nose, there's no one there.
It's literally, there'd have to be no one there.
They'd all be gone. It'd be over.
Yep. Exactly. That's what it is. It's lying. It's just professional lying. And the more you're willing to lie to people and deceive people, the more you get paid. Yeah. In this world. And this is the upside down world we live in, is that you pay people for deceiving people. You gain followers, you gain subscribers by going along with the narrative that they want the world to be. And you just feed them the nonsense that they want you to live. Religion's the same, in my personal opinion.
You do.
It's just feed them the world they want to hear. And if you're not, you're black-pilled. Maybe we should have black-pill politics.
It's very true, mate. It's very true. And the crazy thing is, if you have the ideology that we're talking about here, which is if you're going to be in a position of influence, a position of power, and that doesn't just mean politics, that could mean the media, that could mean in, health advisory roles, pharmaceutical roles, doctors, all those people we look to, lawyers, all those people we look to when people are in trouble or we look to for support. Wanting all those positions to be filled with people with integrity, people with compassion, people who are honest and just want to help people, which is a sense what you should be wanting to do if you go into politics. We'd be called naive, we'd be called idealists, we'd be called hippies, when all you really want is basic decency. And most people that you interact with are completely disengaged, completely disenfranchised and apathetic towards politicians because they know they lie and have continued to lie and deceive for years. So most people would want that system to be different to how it is, and they'd want it to be filled with people who have some integrity and some compassion, understand the trials and tribulations that, real, honest, hard-working people in the cities and towns across the country and across the wider world are dealing with. They don't want to worry about something going on the other side of the world that has nothing to do with us sending money there. They want to have people focused on looking after their own and, ensuring that the very basics of food, water, sanitation, shelter is, provided and is up to a standard that is good. People have enough money to be able to live. I don't think that's an idealistic standpoint. I think that's just common sense, isn't it? Surely that's the definition of a good leader. If your country falls under all those things, that's good, right?
Yeah, it's the thing to aim for. If you fall short of that, you fall slightly short of that, or even a bit short of that. But that's not the aim in the agenda of politics. It's the inversion of that. So even if that was just like the aim of politics, the lofty idealistic goal of politics, that'd be a start. Yeah. But there's not. It's the opposite. It's how many people we can scam and con into doing what we want them to do to have 100%. The outcome that we want for the people that are paying us all this ridiculous amount of money to live the lifestyle that we've been accustomed to, because most of these people haven't done a proper job. So
no, you're right.
The whole thing would come down, mate. It was ridiculous. It would be fun to see, though.
And hopefully in our lifetime, mate, we will see it in one way, shape or form. So you've got an amusing story, I think, to finish with as well, which just sums up the madness of 2025.
Oh, this is amazing. Like, there's lying to the public and there's lying to yourself. Now, this is obviously gaslighting a certain religion now, which has been happening a long time. I mean, I'm not a religious person. I know you're not, but I have respect for anyone who wants to believe whatever they want to believe. Yep. Absolutely fine. Just don't push it on me. Cynthia Erivo, so she was a lady, I believe she was in Wicked, which is another version of Wizard of Oz, basically, to lead Jesus Christ Superstar on stage. Now, I know investigative journalists and all that, but what do you think the lead character of Jesus Christ Superstar would be?
Probably a bloke, for one. Probably with long hair, and probably white. That would be what I'd probably say based on how Jesus is portrayed in the Bible.
So the character of Jesus Christ Superstar, the lead character, would be Jesus.
Yeah.
Would it not?
It would.
So would you cast a lady who's African-American, probably got short hair?
She has a skinhead, yeah.
She's a skinhead. She's African-American. She's probably a lovely lady, but she's got short hair and she looks nothing like what Jesus is supposed to look like. Even if you take the original Jesus, who was Yeshua, and even if you think Jesus actually existed, he was probably Middle Eastern male. She is not any of those things. Now, this is obviously gaslighting the Christian faith completely. So the hit musical by Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber, got questions about him, was originally released as a concept album. It reflects on the final weeks of in the life of Jesus Christ, as told through the eyes of Judas. So apparently in the final weeks of his life, he had a sex change. Emmy, Grammy and Tony Award winner and 3-time Grammy Oscar nominee Erivo will play Jesus at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles. She's an African-American lady playing a man who was possibly Middle Eastern with
Yeah.
dark skin and long dark hair, spoke probably Hebrew or Arabic, and though in the West he seems to have blue eyes and blonde hair and skin like mine, we have no idea what's going on, do we? But this whole gaslighting of the Christian faith, this whole woke nonsense. But it just made me laugh, mate, because you could not. I mean, get Warwick Davis to do it. Go on. It's just like, you just go where you want now. Do what you want.
Yeah, I know it's a bizarre one. Well, Hollywood in general, like I know that there was a lot of questions when she was picked to play Elphaba in Wicked, which I was forced to endure watching with my wife. And I'm going to say her voice is literally spectacular. I'm going to give her that absolutely incredible voice. But yeah, in terms of playing that role, you're right. I think this is definitely a prod to the Christian faith. We've seen that a lot in the West because Christianity, I don't like Christianity. I like some of the concepts it stands for, do unto others as you wish to have to you and things like that. Love thy neighbor. And there's some concepts in there I think that are good, but fundamentally I don't agree with it as a whole. And then you've got obviously Catholicism, which is a similar concept. They were always the religions of the West, absolutely the religions of the West. Whether that be America was founded upon it, literally, except when Trump was sworn in, they hold their hands on the Bible. It's so help me God, all those things. We see that here in the UK as well. And we've seen a number of ways that's been attacked, belittled, gaslit, and prodded in recent years, where there seems to be religious acceptance for every religion except Christianity, for example. A really simple one is if you take the Bible as its absolute gospel, then same-sex marriage is not allowed. You take the Quran, same-sex marriage is not allowed. But there's a lot of spotlight put on what the Bible says and what Christians believe when it comes to that subject, but there's none or very, very little put on Muslims and the Quran when it says exactly the same thing. So it's a very interesting way that it's been attacked over the last few years. We've seen massively. And I agree. I think this is probably another way of attacking it. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's a stage show. A few people will go and watch it. I don't think it's the biggest thing for us to worry about at the moment, but I think it's another example, as you said, that just adds on to more and more and more and more things that have been done towards attacking the Christian faith over the last few years in the West. So, and Hollywood's been one of the top people doing that, hasn't it? Hollywood's about as woke as anything, and as a result, it's probably at its lowest influence, I would say. Hollywood, Hollywood films used to be everywhere. Now, you don't see or hear anything like as much as you used to hear. That the film stars are now running for cover in the light of the exposing of people like Epstein and P. Diddy and what may come from that. So a lot of them are running for cover now rather than putting themselves out there, aren't they?
Yes, it's a strange one. And I think, as you say, it's not the most important story, but it is clearly a prodding and a gaslighting of the Christian faith and the family unit. And that's one thing about the Christian faith that was always kind of something I looked towards and admired was the family unit. It does bring people together. There's so many good things about religion, so many bad things about it. It's like anything, it's dualistic. But this is clearly a prodding and a taking the mickey of the Christian faith here to put this lady as the lead character of Jesus. And they know the reaction they're going to get. She's probably a lovely lady, clearly very talented. But that's not what this is about. This is about dividing people and gaslighting people and devaluing Christianity, which is clearly on their agenda. So when we put this into the wider agenda, why do they want to devalue Christianity here in the West? And that's the question, really.
Well, yeah, that's a massive conversation. I think your point there about family, I think that's probably a very fundamental reason is we've seen the breakdown of the family unit. We've seen the attacks on the family unit from so many different angles. And I think the fact that sanctity of marriage in Christianity is such an important bedrock of it, I think that's one of the reasons they probably want to attack it. Absolutely one of the reasons they want to attack it. Because, strong couples with good, that have children and are good parents and take care of them and stuff, they don't want that dynamic. They don't want that dynamic at all. That's not in any way in their repertoire. They want the opposite of that. So I would suggest that's one of the reasons that Christianity is attacked, along with many others. It's also a big one being changing the dynamic and changing the culture of whatever country. You're a great example, Rich, in Norfolk. In Norfolk, you can't drive through a village without there being a church. There's so many in Norfolk, isn't there? It was the biggest building in every town. It was the town square. It was where people met. It was about community. It was about this. It was about that. That's what it stood for many, many years. And obviously, alongside that, you had the pub, which then probably replaced it in many people's eyes. And now there probably isn't any community in many places. And that's one thing, again, that has broken down over the last few years. So as we said the other week, it's a great opportunity now to start building that back, start getting to know our neighbours, start getting to know people in our towns and villages and streets and stuff, and being there to support each other. Like I was reading this week as well, which was obviously inevitable, as a result of the cuts to the winter fuel allowances, that there's 3 in 4 pensioners are saying they're cold this winter. Well, I guarantee all of us have got pensioners in our streets. Let's try and help them. Let's get to know them. Let's try and support them. Let's do whatever we can to try and help get people get through. Because as we've pointed out so many times, the government and their job, their modus operandi is not to help us. It's to do the exact opposite. So let's take the power out of their hands, stop looking to them to help us when we know they're not going to, and start taking responsibility for doing that ourselves. To use that Christian phrase I said a minute ago, love thy neighbour. Look after the people in your community, and in turn, when you need support, maybe they'll be there to look after you, which I think is a great way to bypass the system and stick 2 fingers up to it, because we know it's not going to do that, and we know that divided, that's exactly how they want us. So united, we have a very different outcome, in my opinion. But anyway, that's my little eulogy over, Rich. Thanks for thanks for this morning.
I can't add to anything.
I think it's just me tomorrow, isn't it? You're off tomorrow, right?
I am off tomorrow. Yeah, got some family business to sort out, and I'll see you on Friday.
Okay, well, I look forward to it, mate. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, everybody. Hope you found today's show insightful and interesting. Please like, subscribe, and share across social media. Let's get this far and wide. We know it's shadow ban to hell, this show. So, as always, the show's been sponsored by Ickonic Coffee. Head over to shop.ickonic.com to get yours today. Use the code TRENDING for 10% off. Thank you very much, and I'll be back with you on my own tomorrow morning.